What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Die Is podcast. I'm Alex. I'm here with Nick and Justin.
Welcome back, everybody.
It's nice to see us.
We knew you wanted to see more of our beautiful faces, so that's why we're centering the camera right
Yeah,
now.
we wanted to wait till we got a good chunk of news so we could really talk about some meaty stuff.
And there has been some meaty stuff.
It definitely has been. So I wanted to, before we get into the meaty stuff, talk about what you guys have been playing.
Sure. I've been playing my Stormcast Dragons. Just every dragon list I can come up with. Every permutation, mixing them up, breathing fire on people.
Have you lost a priority roll yet?
Yes. In our last game,
I talked
lost
about
priority
it.
Roll. Yeah.
I talked about it purposely so that it would stop. No, you don't talk about a no-hitter during the middle of it, but I definitely did that.
Yeah, it was 2 games in a row.
I think it was 2.5 solid games without losing priority roll.
Yeah.
And many of them very consequential priority rolls. So.
Justin, what have you been playing?
Yeah, so with the new Nurgle book, I've started to kind of delve into there. The funny thing is I don't have like a wide diversity of models. Like the old book, it was like Plague Bearers or Blight Kings, a lot of them, some great unclean ones. And
So you bought your list.
yeah,
And
right.
now you're like,
I had my
what do I
list, and now it's like, oh wait, all this other stuff is good. I better start trying to pick that stuff up.
You must have one of the biggest collections of Blight Kings in the country, though.
I'm really looking forward to a time when 60 Blight Kings is playable again. Is that coming, GW? Let me know.
It never
Otherwise,
was.
I got some for sale, guys. So just let me know.
I got 30 at least.
Yeah.
Well, for all your 5,000 point games, you're
Yes.
covered.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. But that's been fun, and then I'm still making my way through the Orc War Clans. I love the book. I think each faction has its strengths, and even Bone Splitters I'm looking forward to trying out, staring at people using the mask as much as possible just because that's fun and strong. So those are the two I'm really concentrating on right now.
Yeah, and I've kind of put Lumineth away and pulled Seraphon out because I only go down like that much, or I only go down or up in the top tier.
Yeah, S tier to SB.
Well, my Idneth feels really close. Like the tomes coming out, it feels a lot closer than anything else. So I'm not really gonna get into them and start practicing to learn all the rules again, and then have them go right out the window.
When you're like the Drake kind of main where it's like A tier. S tier?
Yeah. I only choose the one. But Seraphon I started in 1.0, so...
that's right.
Yeah, OG.
You liked them before, very cool.
Yeah, I liked them when they were really young, cool. What have we been recording on the channel lately? I know we've been doing a lot of Nurgle and Stormcast.
Yeah, so
a lot of Stormcast.
A lot of Stormcast. We've had a really nice run of Stormcast videos with... first we had kind of the new models from Dominion, rolling into some interesting competitive builds with the new Battletome, and then we've had the Dragons lately. So a lot of Stormcast on the channel.
And I've been bringing kind of some random stuff. We had a Stormcast mirror match, and then I thought I'm so creative, I busted it wide open by bringing 120 zombies with Nagash, and we'll talk about why that doesn't work so well anymore in a little bit. But that list felt really good. I suggest if you haven't watched that one, you should give it a watch because it's really about snatching defeat from the claws of victory. I managed to have like a 90% winning odds going into like my turn 2, and then
You outplayed
proceeded
yourself.
just goes.
Sometimes you just need to play to your outs, right?
Yeah.
So you just wait for your opponent to
double
completely double miscast and then misplay afterwards, and you collect your easy win.
Yeah. It was like, I'm gonna win this in the top of turn or in the bottom of turn 2, and then it's like, oh, I'm conceding in the bottom of 3. So that's pretty fun.
I feel like we've had a lot of games on and off the channel that feel like they're over at the end of turn 2 and then really close by the end of turn 5.
Yeah.
So maybe if you just stuck it out there.
Yeah, and I was giving Nick compliments. Oh, way to stick it out. And I'm like, as soon as it looked bad for me, I'm like, this is bullshit.
That's how it always is, though. You feel super ahead, and you're like, should I say the thing that feels a little cocky?
Sure.
And then you go right downhill.
Well, I literally have Nick off camera being like, where did I go wrong? And, so I'm feeling like so great. And then it's just, boom. So, yeah, check that out. It's really fun to watch my heart break right on screen.
And most recently, the Nurgle game. Right?
Yeah.
We had a Stormcast Nurgle game. Really exciting game. Felt really tight. Felt really competitive. And it really showed off what Nurgle can do.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more when I think we talk about like what we like about Nurgle and stuff like that. But I was a little nervous about how that would go because Stormcast are really strong. Now you brought like a cheese lord list with the two big dragons, Karzai and Cragnose.
Yeah.
But
such a great model. So
ultimately, I felt it was pretty well positioned into your list, though. You had a Plague Bear spam list, a lot of models, and the dragons with their tail attacks. Maybe 2 dragons isn't the most competitive list, but that number of tail attacks into the Plague Bears, it felt really good. And I thought I was significantly ahead. Kind of same situation. Felt I was significantly ahead, and then things tightened up.
So let's get into it. There's a new Nurgle Tome.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Early impressions from you guys. I mean, Nick, you've been on the other side of them, and now you're we're going to do a winter tournament where you're going to play them.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about the book. I think it's a really strong book. I think the points jumps really threw people off, and people were looking at big points jumps and saying, well, these things are just unplayable now. And I think there's a lot of power in a lot of the units. Not necessarily as much offensive power as a lot of people would like, but the staying power and then kicking back a significant amount of damage from some of the monsters, having the disease points rack up. I think it's a strong book. I'm excited to play it. I think there's a lot of interesting tricks you can pull in the book too.
Sure.
I want to explore those.
I don't know if I'm good enough to pull those off like you plan to, but I think once those tricks are pulled off, you'll have people flipping tables.
Sure.
And so Nick is basically talking about some of the anti-pylon stuff that you can accomplish with Plague Bearers and a few of the anti-pylon ones on the wheel and then the others on Sloppity.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of prop a couple of... if you're going into a horde, how's it kind of work? You prop a couple of Plague Bearers up and you keep coherency?
Your 2 front lines set up and they're lined up. Your enemy's here, you charge into them and you get just a couple Plague Bearers to tag them in a couple places and you keep your front line something like 2.9 inches away from them. And because they're within 3, they can't pile on in any closer. They're just going to be attacking those 2 that you got close, and the whole unit's just tar-pitted there. It can get ugly.
Yeah, I have a lot less experience with the new Nurgle Codex. I remember looking at the disease counter things and thinking, oh, this seems relatively decent. And then you just told me before we started recording, I didn't even realize it was every turn. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just on your turn. So that seems way better than people were thinking it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought it was attack on, like, kind of ability. But, like, playing it, I was going through the demon, artifacts, and I was telling Nick, all these artifacts are trash. But then you notice that they're all built around disease points. And, like, disease points, like, be it the Wither Stave that's giving you a +1 to hit on the disease points, or something that's allowing you to put disease points on 5s and 6s. It's one of those things, if you don't have a ton of wounds in your army, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, like my 10 wound guy has only had 2 wounds put on them in actual combat, but now they're down to 2 wounds total because I've just been getting attrition from these disease points. Right. So disease is like really, really strong. You got to get there, which is kind of one thing that I know a lot of people are a bit upset about. Is Nurgle got a lot slow. Yeah. But they have a couple of tricks.
And they've got a couple of spells that can project those disease points almost table wide.
Yeah.
But they don't get any bonuses to cast or anything like that. Right. So against an army with even semi-decent denial powers, you're kind of...
Right.
How do you think this serves as like a natural foil to like the shooting that we're seeing, the mortal wound shooting and the hero face shooting and stuff like that?
I think it's perfect against that. And I think just the 5-up ward and the density of wounds, heroes that oftentimes you're vulnerable heroes you can summon back anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, a bunch of sentinels takes off your Sloppity Biopiper. Next turn you just bring another one on the table. I think Nurgle is a perfect foil to that kind of mortal wound shooting.
How do you like the summoning ability? I know you're talking about that like previously. in the last episode.
Sure. It feels a lot like the old one.
Yeah.
Right. I expected maybe a little bit more of a change for 3rd edition, and it feels very much like the old one.
So not much difference there for.
But like because you can bring on 10 Plague Bearers, and 10 Plague Bearers are 14, so a lot of times I think turn 1 you'll bring on like one of the Plague Bearer heroes, which is either Sloppity or Spoiled Pox Scrivener, and then turn 2 or 3 you're definitely probably getting the 10, and that's a 20 wound block that's coming on relatively late in the game after a couple battles have happened, and they're gonna either camp an objective or tie something up, and like that's what happened in our game. I brought on 10, they tied something up, and they didn't get out of that combat the whole time, so that's nice, the 2 wound Plague Bearers.
The summoning is particularly interesting in a couple of different builds, and I think the Glotkin is maybe the best position to take advantage of.
Why don't you talk about that? Because I don't feel I'm skilled enough to play that build that you're excited about.
I'm really excited about the Glotkin. Glotkin is 700 points now, and so that's like God model price, right? But it's got a command ability, and this is the first command ability we've seen on a War Scroll in 3.0.
Yeah, that's right.
They kind of got rid of them. Nurgle has a couple, I think, throughout the tome, but the Glotkin's is the big one. And the Glotkin's command ability, as everybody knows, you use it at the end of your opponent's movement phase. You get to charge them with the Glotkin and up to 1 other unit. And that can be any Nurgle unit. Or Maggotkin.
Yeah.
Demon or otherwise. So, perfect thing, summon something cheap, use that for this. Because it happens at the end of the movement phase, you charge them before they have an opportunity to shoot, before they have an opportunity to charge. You can lock their unit in against something like 3 Nurglings that they really don't want to be fighting. You've got a block of Fulminators that comes in at you, throw 3 Nurglings at them.
You got to make sure you're getting the summoning points consistently, and you probably want to keep the Glotkin out a little bit.
Yes.
I did play a game of Cruel Boys against Nurgle where I was a really heavy like Gut Rippas and Snatch a Boss list, and Glotkin didn't hold up amazingly well in combat against. Well, I had a lot of Mighty Brute Troggoths too, so it didn't hold up amazing. But I think if you're like you want to just send filth and slag into.
So the Glotkin's command ability is that he and another unit can attempt to charge, or they rather, it's triplets, and another unit can attempt to charge. But when you attempt to charge, you roll the dice. You don't have to move at all.
Yeah.
So you roll the Glotkin's charge. You can send him into something else over in a different direction, or you can just leave him there. He doesn't have to move anywhere. And then that other unit that's nearby him, you throw them in the enemy, and the enemy's stuck there. Their shooting phase, they got to shoot that unit. Their combat phase, they have to fight that unit, and then it's your turn or their turn again. And the next turn you do the same thing. Throw another unit out. It can be incredibly frustrating for melee hammers.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a bit more skill intensive than your average build.
Sure.
But the other great thing about the Glotkin is if you have Mortal Heavy, that spell Fleshy, Abundance of Flesh, it's slightly different than the demon name. That spell is great too. It gives a +1 wound to your mortal units. So.
And the best unit to take advantage of that is your Putrid Blight Kings. Well, if you're running 5 Putrid Blight Kings, +1 wound on them isn't that big a deal. It takes them from 21 wounds for the unit to 25 wounds to the unit, but it makes them all count as 2 models because they get to that 5 wound threshold.
So good.
It's really good.
And that
What if you're running 60 of them?
Well, if you're running 60, and you're 5k point
I kind of think that you don't leave home right now with Nurgle without 1 20-pack of Plague Bearers.
It feels that way to me too.
Like, I would even say you almost want to start with 2. Just start 600 points down and then build the rest of your list. Like, then you can do whatever you want. But if you have those 2 or even 1 just base, ton of wounds that are going to be on a 5-up, that aren't going anywhere, it's going to feel nice to start. I think some of the things I like about the book is I think Pusco Blightlords finally got their ability. The Lord of Affliction is really good. I don't think anybody has those right now because they were bad for so long, but I think you're going to see a lot of builds with concentrating on that.
I think there's a lot of people with like 2 of them because they came and started collecting, right?
Yeah. And you love the Beast of Nurgle.
Unbuilt.
I think the Beast of Nurgle is really strong.
It is. And you were comparing it, when we heard other people comparing it to the single Puscoils, which it's kind of like, do you want the flying or do you want the better damage? It's like a horse apiece kind of. But
it's really good to hear too that you guys, because everything online is that the points are going to make this army unplayable. They're too slow. They're not good. And getting it on the tabletop, it's the same thing when they start, like when Warcom starts revealing things one by one and people are like, this army's ruined. And then you get it on the table and you're like, oh my god, everything kind of works together how it's supposed to.
There's a couple deep striking things you can do. The Nurglings can come in.
Natively on their war scroll.
Yep, at the end of movement. So that's nice. So there's a little deep strike there. And actually build up your Contagion points because they'll be likely in the opponent's territory. You don't want them fighting or anything. And then Gutrot Spume, you can just, like when I played, we just brought a 5-pack of Blight Kings, or you could bring in Magath Lord. All the Magath Lords got really good.
They're really good.
Bring a Magath Lord and Gutrot, drop them
the Glock
back
can
there.
if you want.
If you want to get 1,000 points invested or 870 points invested, you can do that. But, you drop that stuff back there, and now it's the opponent's fighting on two fronts against stuff that just doesn't die. They're going to have to put real models into them.
Do you think they're better off now than they were before? Because you were like on the fence and you thought they were better.
I think they're improved.
Yeah,
this is a 1.0 book.
It is weird.
Yeah.
So there's like stuff like there was a lot of very interesting stuff before.
Yes.
Very fast. You could use the Harbinger and string stuff out long ways to get 5-ups.
All the buffs were within instead of wholly within, which there's still a little bit of.
Yeah. The Fleshy Abundance and Abundance of Flesh are both not wholly within randomly.
But that was never a thing back then. We didn't really care about any of that.
No.
And
the points were cheap.
Yeah.
You could bring a lot of stuff. A lot of people before 3.0 came along would run that list with 40 or 50 Blight Kings. I don't know who would do that. It's total cheese lord. Where they would put him into the Blight Cyst, and then you had Ren, and you'd attack with 5, and all of a sudden you'd have 30 hits, and it was.
But you used
awesome
to bring
like that.
You used to bring Blight Lords, and I can't remember how many you brought against me.
45.
2 games in a row.
Yeah.
And it felt like, okay, you have 200 and some odd wounds,
yes,
and there's nothing I can do. And those games always came down to turn 5, end of the turn. One of us, you're almost tabled. I'm just can't get points. And now it feels like that's balanced itself out a little bit.
That was the 2.0 playstyle, right?
Yeah.
And the 2.0 was as many Blight Kings as you could, a few synergy pieces, maybe you ran a Ghoul, or maybe you just crammed in more Blight Kings. And it was a little bit oppressive against some armies, because a lot of armies just could not.
It was basically the Giants of 2nd edition.
It was. In a lot of ways, it was the Giants.
You just moved up and said, can you get through this amount of wounds?
It looked really bad on War Scroll Builder to bring a list that was 87 wounds or 97 wounds, and then you have 220, and it's like, well, there's just not much I can do. And then it always came down to, like, everything was super close. You kill off Blight Kings, and they weren't super tanky compared to what you're talking about now with some of the 5-ups that you get.
So 3.0 came, bumped the points on all of those things massively, right? And you could no longer run that kind of spam list. You couldn't get enough models on the table to make it work.
Yeah. So early in 3.0 it was probably weaker. The casting was your spells were better, more interesting.
Artifacts were way better.
Artifacts were awesome.
Was incredible.
Some of the sub-allegiance abilities, like Magnificent Wanderers, was just. You're getting mortal wounds back. There's all these like great synergies
you
that
were flying
existed.
across the table. Yeah. A unit of Marauders could cover the table for sure in Nurgle.
So no, it's a lot different. But with the wounds, I brought I think 177, and like wounds have gone down a lot in 3rd edition. So like 177 wounds, all on a 5-up after save. That's like 250 wounds you're playing against.
Yes, and a 5-up after save on all of these units, it's effectively 50% more wounds.
Yeah.
Right. So 100 wounds is 150.
You're still getting a crazy amount of wounds, and one thing that I heard a lot of people talk about was that Guos are too expensive now. Mm-hmm. And they are very expensive. 500 points is no joke for a model. But they kind of slap now. Whereas before,
compared to what they were
tissue paper.
They're nothing like the Magath Lords. They're not killing machines, but they
if you pick the right battle, and you kind of have to maybe invest best day or finest hour and make sure that
everybody calls it best day.
Yeah. But their charge, Nick brought this up to me, and I wasn't even thinking about this. So their charge damage works against monsters now,
their monsters action,
gigantic, because on a 2-up you're doing 4 mortal wounds when they're at their top profile. 4 mortal wounds is no joke. It's nothing to sneeze at, and their shooting is run 3.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's D6, so sometimes it's going to be amazing, sometimes it's going to be crap, but it's like D6 hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, or maybe vice versa. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you really weaken something up before you even get into it, and then if you can just get a few hits through on the sword, which is 4 damage, and then both of the smaller weapons are good, I mean, it's a dead model.
There's no phase that you really kill something, right?
I mean, it's a dead model.
That's a dead model.
You can't deny it. It's a dead model.
You don't get in and, wow, this phase was really impactful, right? But you do some damage at the end of the movement phase with the disease point, right? You do some damage in the charge phase with your belly flop. You do some damage in the shooting phase with your shooting. And then you do some damage in the combat phase, and then you do some damage in the battle shock phase from the disease points. It really adds up, and the Guo is well positioned to just sit there and tank it while it's doing those things.
It feels like literal attrition, like sickness.
Yes.
But then the good thing, it's not a perfect army. It's slow.
Absolutely.
You put a lot of chaff into it, it's going to get pinned, right? Like if you're fast and you chaff it, they're just not going to get out of their territory. There's weaknesses, so it's into that thing we like rock, paper, scissors. I'm going to like it against shooting. I'm not going to like it against, I don't know, pick your chaff army.
Sure.
Or whatever. And, so it's balanced, and I think it's going to be fun, and I think people just haven't got it on the table very much yet.
How do you like it against, like, the top, like, Giants, Lumineth, DOK?
Don't like it against Giants.
No.
If you're 4 Giants, you're just in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I think even if you bring kind of the idealist against Giants, you're just not going to pour out enough damage. Spreading disease to a bunch of units doesn't really apply against Giants.
Yeah.
Those disease points, if you're doing 7 disease points a turn and 3.5 mortal wounds a turn from that, it takes a long time to get through 35.
Yeah, and Lumineth I think it will be good against. Like, Lumineth is slow too, to a certain extent.
For the most part.
The range shooting, like you said, it's going to take off a Sloppity or Spoilpox or even one of the mortal heroes, but like it's not going to get through a Guo, at least in one round.
Yeah, there just isn't enough on a unit of, especially now that they're more expensive, a unit of Sentinels is not going to chew through your whole army.
Right.
And now that you have to invest so much into them, it's just not, it's not going to do enough. On 177 wounds, a unit of 20s or a unit of 20 is 19 shots, you're not going to take off a lot.
It takes a lot of Sentinel shots to kill a unit of 20 Plague Bearers.
Yeah.
If you're looking at 60 effective wounds on the Plague Bearers, with counting the Disgustingly Resilient, the Sentinels can shoot at that for a long time, and then you can just start rallying them back.
Yeah, and that's never the ideal unit for Sentinels, but...
Right.
You wind up at some point going, all right, I got to start killing something or I'm never going to take objectives.
They're on an objective,
It's so easy to summon those demon heroes, too, that you can literally bring on one every turn. So, yeah, you get rid of one. One's coming back. If that's what your target, one's going to come back and still be buffing those guys up.
And they're on, meanwhile, a Lookout Sir, 7 wounds or so, 5 up save, 5 up after save.
It's
10 effective wounds against Lumineth.
Yeah,
you have to dedicate shooting to it. And
that's 10 wounds is 30 Sentinels with their mortals.
Right.
And I don't think anything is good against Foxes, to be honest with you. Like, super heavy shooting maybe, but like I think Foxes is just kind of the busted list that exists right now.
Well, I mean, if you can't take objectives, Foxes aren't,
Yeah,
they're not going to pile through. Yeah, they're not going to pile through and clear an objective out. So, what do you do against that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
You can also, if you are running if you're running Gutrot and some Blight Kings, getting in the back lines against Lumineth always feels bad.
Yeah. Also, I'm not saying Foxes are bad.
What else is top of the meta right now?
Daughters of Cain, Lumineth, Seraphon.
I think no one talks about Seraphon. I think Seraphon's just...
I think we should stop talking about it.
Really
points are going to go up.
Seraphon is really good. But
it's just balancing everything.
So a lot of the armies, how I feel that Nurgle is positioned right now, is a lot of the armies are heavily targeting Giants, as they should, right? That's how meta works. And it feels like Nurgle can really bully the people who are targeting Giants.
Yep.
And then probably loses to Giants.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's good. It's that rock paper scissors that we want.
Yeah, and I feel like Seraphon's really well positioned to target dragons.
Sure.
So I don't know how that's gonna play into Nurgle necessarily, but it's a lot of mortals is not gonna, or for Seraphon, they're not gonna do much against it with their -1 damage. Like,
sure,
what does that help with?
Yeah. Two last things I would talk about with Nurgle before I think we can probably wrap them is the wheel is still pretty interesting if you ask me. Like, you can't control it like you could in previous editions, but like the one where you can't do a heroic action, you can't spend command points from a hero. Really cool. I mean,
not being able to pile in,
really
good
for me.
It feels like the wheel has more impactful spots. There's a greater number of those spots on the wheel that are good, but not having any way to manipulate it.
Yeah,
you're going to go through turns where you're on the bad ones.
You just have less agency on what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the mortal command traits and artifacts. There's two artifacts, Rustfang, and then the shield or the helm that goes up the 4+ after save seem really strong to me.
Sure.
And
their command trait is maybe among the best in the game. 7-inch bubble of enemy units cannot receive commands. So
I don't think they can issue either, right?
I can't remember if they can issue, but it's not wholly within enemy units, right? So you get that Lord of Afflictions with that command trait, and you get him behind a block of Plague Bearers or something like that.
And you have him on
just
a 4+
tag a couple units with that 7-inch bubble, and suddenly, no all-out attack, no all-out defense, no inspiring presence, and
people talk about Iron Jaws being strong right now. Well, now you might kill just one Brute or Gorgrunta, and now they can't spend a point for inspiring presence, and those guys go away. Their bravery is not high.
Yeah, no.
So, I mean, it's really good stuff.
Even things like reroll charge. If an enemy comes 6 inches out and fails that 6-inch charge, can't reroll the charge.
It's so bad.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's just great.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nurgle I think is initial impressions were bad, but I think we're all agreeing that it's going to be a fun, strong book, and it doesn't look like anything's overpowered that they're going to nerf, and it doesn't look like anything's so weak that they need to super.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like, let's play it once and see how it plays before we throw all our models out or put them on eBay.
Yeah, I think disease points were just hard to imagine in your head. I think they seemed bad to everyone, and then all of a sudden, like you said, they're happening both turns, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
this is
completely.
actually good.
I completely missed that when I was reading through them, and I'm like, well, 5 times you get this effect, but every turn, that's pretty big.
I think it'll be very common that at the end of the game, if you were to tally up the damage you did from disease points, 20 mortal wounds, 25 mortal wounds over the course of the game. That's a big deal against a lot of armies that are running maybe 100 to 110 wounds.
Yeah.
It adds up, right? It's only maybe 5 a round or 5 a turn, but it keeps clicking.
Yeah.
Hey, and like you said, 3.5 wounds every time. If you do it 10 times, it's a dead giant right there.
Right.
We've cracked it up. It's a dead
max
model.
Disease points on all 4 of them, starting from the first turn.
And
bottom of 5, they're dead.
do we want to address the Nalma?
I think we should. Yeah. So obviously, there's the controversy. Some people may not be aware of it, but
I'm not aware of it. And I'm in between you.
So the Gnarlmaw right now is worded that for each of them on their war scroll, it says gain a contagion point for each Gnarlmaw on the table. Well, if 3 of them have that ability, and there are 3 Gnarlmaws on the table, does each of them get 3 contagion points?
So you'd be getting 9 instead of just 1 each. So it's like the rules is written. I think you could interpret it that, but no one. I mean, the summoning's good enough right now. If you do that, it's gonna be.
If you really lean into it and follow that interpretation, things get really ugly.
Yeah, real crazy.
So this is the second time Games Workshop has had exactly this issue with exactly a summoning unit. Damn. The Infernal and Rapturous had the same wording on her war scroll. Based on the number of... for each Infernal and Rapturous on the table, gain 1 depravity. Well, if you got 3 of them, they all have that ability. Counts up. They FAQ'd it almost immediately, as they should have.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people were going to run 5 of them and get 25 depravity in their turn.
So we're expecting this to happen.
Yeah, I'm guessing the FAQ is going to clear
But
it up.
you just never know. Speaking of
Yeah.
FAQs, sometimes you
just never know.
Yeah.
So the winter update happened. We were all just on pins and needles anticipating, and I think we always wish list GW was gonna go in there and really throw some haymakers and just change up the game a lot.
I want to give them some props though, because people thought this was going to be really delayed, really drawn out, and there it was. First day of winter, they dropped the FAQ.
First day.
That was for Sean right there.
Yep.
There were some impactful changes.
Yeah,
for
for
sure. And then there were some not so impactful changes.
Or some missing.
Or some
impactful
completely
changes.
missing.
Yeah.
So let's go with the good stuff first, right?
Okay, good stuff first. Amulet of Destiny has changed. Everybody was screaming about
that's
it.
right in the middle of stuff. That's like, I don't feel awesome about it.
Do you play Giants?
I've been
Do you
known to
also play
Giants.
Iron Jaws?
Yeah. This is what I'll say. Going to a 6-up means it's pretty crappy, right?
Yeah, it's a dead artifact now.
But we've always been, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Hero phase shooting has not been addressed, right?
Sure.
Barely by some weak points changes and not touched in the terms of Raptors.
Sure.
And previously, big monsters or important heroes that you needed to keep around could stay around through that with the amulet on a 5-up.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Now they are not living through that shooting anymore.
So the 2 places where Amulet of Destiny
The most
was
important
most impactful in the game, you know both of them very well.
Yeah.
Mega Gargants, probably a gatebreaker.
That's why Amulet got changed.
Right,
Yeah.
for sure. And Iron Jaws Mega Boss on Maul Crusher. Those were the 2 best places
Which was
to
so
put an
good.
Amulet of Destiny.
How many of those models do you have?
I have like 8 now, but it's like a really complicated situation.
Both of those armies were sitting at the top of the meta when this change comes through. I know there's a lot of other armies that ran Amulet, benefited from Amulet, and they're going to suffer from that loss and not having that protection. But that was directly targeted at 2 very strong armies.
And my only wish was just change it to Mortal Wounds. And then it gives
Sure.
you that balance.
And I was hoping for a kind of like lookouts or like a wound limit, like 9 wounds and less gets a 5-up war.
Sure.
There was more interesting ways to change it. They effectively did what they wanted to do in nerfing the Mega Boss. And I just never want to see Raptors now. It just I'll just lift up my model that I want to stay around. I'll just take them right off the board if I see Raptors against Iron Jaws.
Yeah, I'm fine with this change for the most part. I didn't really bring Amulet as much as Giants.
Your army, Lumineth, and the Seraphon.
So any change that removes something from the game is a little bit too much of a change.
Yeah.
Right. You want to see changes that, yes, this thing's too strong or situationally too strong. We're going to tone it down. We're going to remove it from those situations, or we're just going to bring it down in line. And they did go further than that. Right. They said, all right, 5-up is now 6-up. Well, all right.
But I mean, everything you do is going to remove it for some army.
Sure.
A 5-up ward for 9 wounds or less will remove it for Giants and for Maw Crushers. A 5-up ward against Mortals probably removes it for some people. And so you're never gonna make everybody happy. At least this is like a hey, you can still bring it on a Gargant. It's still almost 6 extra wounds.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, which you didn't have enough wounds.
Yeah.
So,
and the Gargant players were running the 6-up ward artifact that they have in their book.
True.
Yeah,
It's just uninteresting. It's just the least interesting.
Yeah, it's like what we say about points. Like points is a very inelegant way to like take something off the table, but they do it, and they do it a lot.
So more props. Unleash Hell.
Yes.
I think. Okay, so. Ben, stop listening for a minute if you're listening. I think that what they did with Unleash Hell was awesome.
I think they nailed it.
And I was one of those people that said, well, it should just be the model getting charged. This is even just as good. It's now they change it to models within 6.
Yeah, I just take it out of the game.
Well,
just get it out of the game.
I think there's a place for it. I think the place was not every shooting unit that's good just becomes better.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is not what you want here.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're charging Sentinels, you still get the full Sentinel shot. Except for...
Depending on how you charge.
Yeah, depending on how you charge them.
Yeah, be a little bit crafty.
Yeah, like, I wanna put the onus on the shooting unit, not on the charging unit.
So, I don't mind if I'm charging Sentinels that I'm going to eat the Unleash Hell. What I hate is when I charge the Wardens in front of them.
And then you get the
and I eat the full Unleash
Yes.
Hell. And they toned that down. You're going to lose some of those shots generally if you're charging.
And originally I missed...
separate unit.
Yeah, and originally I missed that it was all models within 6 inches.
So did I.
Sure.
And that it makes it a lot better, but it's still something that I would be fine if they just went, you know what, we screwed up, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a definite 40K thing.
Yeah, Overwatch and 40K.
Sure.
But Overwatch and 40K is on 6s only, and this is just with a -1 to hit rolls. You still proc your mortals, you still do all that, so I don't know.
It was also a Warhammer Fantasy thing.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
I
Standard
never
shoot was
played
a thing in
Fantasy.
Warhammer Fantasy. I didn't either, but standard shoot was a thing.
Yeah. The thing that bothered me the most that they addressed here, it bothered me before and doesn't anymore, is the heroic recovery, which
Sure.
just really grinds my gears.
It has a huge impact on how some heroes play.
Yeah, well, and like Karazai, when you were playing him, you healed like 9 wounds in combat, and I'm like,
Sure.
how do you ever beat this?
I don't remember Karazai sticking in combat for very long in that game at all, so I don't remember that being the case.
Well, maybe it was like 3 in combat, 6 out of combat.
That sounds about
but,
right. Yeah.
But either way, I played another game against an off-camera game, and he healed 7, I think, across the game in combat, and I'm like, I just can't beat this model.
And it's especially good on a handful of things, right?
Yeah.
Like Gotrek, loved it.
Yeah.
Get Gotrek stuck in on his 3-up ward. He heals D3. He's a happy little dwarf. Sigvald loved it. Anything with a ward that could double down on the healing.
Yeah.
And I like it. They actually gave a little bit of destruction, a little bit of help, because now if you roll even with it, it's not just 1 anymore.
Right.
So these lower bravery models have like a little bit better chance of getting D3.
Yeah.
But, so that was another good thing. I think we can agree that
That the Marathi buff needed to happen.
man, why daughters can never go down in this strength, can they? So daughters got better, even though they raised the points on the shooting snakes by 10 or 20.
I don't know if they really got better. I mean, Marathi got better, but as a whole, I think they probably pulled back a little bit.
I would say
not enough.
Even.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really hated about the FAQ was the fact that they kind of killed Coalition for Chaos.
It's
I
done.
mean, they left it
kind
untouched
of.
everywhere else.
They
right?
absolutely killed it.
Order, Coalition, untouched, fine. I really loved being able to have a core of Slaves to Darkness units that I could then have in any god army. And now you're running them and it feels bad.
Yeah, it's gone. And one of our friends, Sean, he plays Tzeentch, and Tzeentchion or Archeon Tzeentch is just
Archeon's got
is it gone? I don't know. It's one of those things, just like the Nurgle book. Got to put it on the table and see what it does.
Archeon is still strong, right? Like,
yeah,
as
he's
an
strong by
individual
himself.
You run some of his buff pieces from the Slaves Tome. There are some of the spells from Tzeentch that he can still get buffs from.
Yeah, but he can't take Tzeentch spells anymore.
No Destiny dice. Yes.
Yeah.
He's not broken
rough.
good. He's just strong, and in Slaves to Darkness now he's better.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's how it should be, because it's not very fun playing against Archeon and Tzeentch.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that everybody talked about, oh, they should do something about this, and then they do something about it, and it's like, I don't know that I like. I don't know that I like it. I don't know that I like it better now.
If the problem is Archeon and Tzeentch, address Archeon and Tzeentch. Or if the problem is Archeon in every army, address Archeon in every army. But instead, they also addressed Chaos Warriors and Slaanesh. They addressed, Marauder Horsemen and Nurgle. They addressed everything.
Yeah. Kind of a...
So now with all those models, you better have Slave to Darkness, because they're not safe to play anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, and then they changed By My Will, so he can't use it.
Sure.
by
But
himself.
that got a little bit better because at least that goes on any chaos
It's any
model.
chaos model.
Not just
Instead of it, yeah.
Things like Scarbrand.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
But I say overall, I liked it. I didn't want to play against that kind of because like a lot of times if I played against it, my strategy was just like, oh, I'm just gonna stay away. Like,
Just
kill
avoid it.
everything
just
else.
ignore everything else.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stay away and see if I can win without doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, they fixed the Arcan problem.
So
But-
what about the Nagash problem? So
I would
Nagash
say
got
that problem's been fixed too.
Nagash. So I think in the Broken Realms book, Teclis basically killed Nagash.
Yeah,
And then
he's now
GW made
dormant
sure-
as far as I know.
GW was like, you know what, we're fluffy. We are going to kill Nagash for every army other than
Nighthawk.
Yeah.
Nighthawk.
Of course.
So now you can at least put him in Feck and Nighthawk. Good.
Should have been there from the beginning.
Ridiculous that he wasn't.
Yeah.
Right?
And now that he's so cheap and affordable at $9.55.
Yeah, he's only $9.55, but like literally he's gone from so light. That just erase any kind of
And
build.
OBR.
Oh, just done.
There's a little bit of a contentious rule there too that we should maybe bring up. So now Nagash, you can ally into. They're not ally. You can just run him in Nighthawk.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get any allegiance abilities.
That's a big thing is why he's dead. You just don't get allegiance abilities anymore. Oh, and his command trait command ability went from best in the game to
Pretty
absolute
not
poor.
ideal. Yeah.
But in Nighthaunt, there's some interesting interactions. In Emerald Host, the Hex Wraiths can take wounds from the general. It's not the general passing the wounds to them. It's them taking the wounds from the general. There's no specification on whether it needs to be a Nighthaunt general or your chosen general or anything like that. It's just if there's a general that takes damage nearby, the Hex Wraiths can steal it. There's some debate about whether that means that Nagash is benefiting from an allegiance
That is
ability.
like, I'm sorry, I find that insane. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even. I guess I can understand what benefit means, but like,
Sure.
that seems like way too far of an interpretation. Of
I
the
think
word
it's a
benefit.
slippery slope argument to say that that's benefiting. But assuming that Hex Wraiths can take wounds for him, you can get just a combat monster in Nighthaunt with a block of wounds that cannot be killed.
Healing himself, casting pretty good spells.
The pass off, I think, is on a 2-up.
Miscasting pretty good spells.
It happens.
Yeah.
He can still miscast. Let's just hope.
Yeah.
for
But then
that.
he gets to pass those wounds off.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I love that they think benefit.
So you just kill the Hex Wraiths. Let's just kill Hex
Yeah,
Wraiths.
you just kill all the
Hex
Hex Wraiths on the table on their 6-up ward, 4-up ethereal.
No, you let Hex
Speaking
Wraiths
of 6-up ward.
you let Hex Wraiths kill your wardens, and then the Cathalar just makes them battle
just
shock right
sweeps
off.
them. Yeah.
So you want to know one model that doesn't have the only model I think in all the Death Allegiances that can't get a 6-up ward. Do you know
Well,
what it is?
that's a Grand Alliance death thing. That's been there from the beginning. Surely every death model has a 6-up ward.
Every single one
Is
has
there
to.
some
Like the God of
insignificant
Death,
presence?
obviously.
Well, he probably has like a 4-up ward,
Yeah.
right?
No, he can't get a 6-up after.
Doesn't
saving.
have the 6-up after save anymore.
Yeah, but
what
he's
an oversight.
so much cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just dropped this point so far.
Yeah.
rough for Nagash.
Well, maybe they'll FAQ the FAQ. And
The thing is, you probably are going to see him just as often because now Nighthaunt is like, all these people in Nighthaunt armies are like,
Yes.
it's time. So you're going to see him just as often, but
Yeah.
that is the only time you will ever see him now.
I don't know that it's that strong in Nighthaunt. Nighthaunt has just had so little for so long that they now have a monster they can really play with.
I hope they get a new book soon, and I hope they fix this.
Sure. Rumors are they're gonna.
But I also hope they fix Nagash and either change his points. I mean, 700 would probably seem reasonable to me at this point.
Seems like it. You were paying at least a couple hundred points for his command ability
His command
before.
ability was so strong.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
re-rolling ones to hit table wide,
Battle shock.
re-rolling ones to save table wide, battle shock immunity table wide. That was a good command ability in 3.0.
Will you get a 5-up after save or is it 4-up after save now? With
You can push one ward on one unit to be
in
one
only
better.
the combat phase, right?
Only in the combat phase. Rough.
So bad.
Rough.
Yeah. And
So
it's-
yeah, Nagash is dead.
Yeah. Well, and he's 955, which is where Cragnose should be now that he's broken.
Well, I think I lost this argument. I think Cragnose is a lot better now.
Better.
And worth his points, probably.
Yeah.
Very much improved. Worth his points in some
Close.
armies, but very much improved. You have a real case to take him now.
So there's two abilities I think that really you have to talk about, and that's one, he got mightier, makes rightier, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Now he's a 30. He counts as 30 models on objective.
Yeah,
On
That's
top
great.
bracket.
Yeah,
it tables down
brackets.
to 18, I think, at the
But
bottom.
18
yeah,
even
18 at the bottom.
And his bracketing isn't bad. Right?
After
You've got
10 wounds, he brackets.
Right. So you've got a long period of him sitting on an objective and just dominating it. Even from a non-taker Mega Gargant,
Yeah.
Cragnose is just going to own that objective.
How do the just circling back to the Nurgle books, how do they bracket? Do they bracket at like half wounds, or do they bracket early and then?
They bracket closer to half wounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
It got better.
It seems like that's kind of the
they've
trend
improved it across the board,
that's kind of the trend they've been going with, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Because bracketing at 3 wounds taken for some models is
Yes.
quite annoying.
So bad.
And then there's the extra benefit in 3.0, or at least in this General's Handbook, of being able to fight a top bracket
Yeah.
for one of your monsters. So bracketing feels a lot better now than it did.
Yeah, the command ability I forget every time we play.
Sure.
What are your favorite parts of Cragnose?
I love the 3d6 charge. Not because it's necessarily really broken strong, but because it's finally an ability that Cragnose has that makes him feel like part of an army.
Yeah.
Before, he was just over there doing his thing, no interaction with any other models.
Given bravery.
He did give them +1 bravery.
+1.
Yeah.
I love that he now has
Is
a
that
meaningful aura. Oh, yeah, I think that was replaced.
Unbelievable.
That was the
They
whole
nerfed
reason
the hell
to
out of
play.
him. But
Well,
Yeah. It should be 500 points.
The
now.
real tragedy, though, in Cragnose, and it can't be overstated how sad this is, for the first 6 months of Cragnose's life, he had an ability on his Battlescroll to reroll hits against dragons. And there were no dragons in the game. It didn't
there's
exist. The Star Drake. The Star Drake was the one thing, right? And now there are dragons everywhere, and they took that ability away. It's just gone. No, sorry, Cragnose. You kill dragons. Oh, just kidding.
It's kind of my favorite thing they've ever done.
It's pretty atrocious.
the
timing on
mysteries
it
of
is so
GW,
bad.
how things work, are just... There's many of them,
Right.
and we will never understand at all.
I think they must have just decided there's just too much text on this Battlescroll. We need to get rid of one thing. What's it going to be?
I feel like they're pickup artists, GW, a little bit, where they try to remain such an enigma. We just keep coming back, and they nag us, and we're like, oh, more GW. We love the mystery.
And he now has a 6-up ward,
Yeah.
which is, people will complain about Amulet of Destiny, but a 6-up ward on a model that couldn't take Amulet before feels pretty impactful to me.
Right.
I know you were not super psyched
I mean,
about
it's 3 wounds, but what I guess I wasn't thinking about is just that he already has such a good immunity to magic-based mortal
Yes.
wounds. So
Yeah.
now it's really just, we're talking about shooting mortal wounds, magic mortal wounds. He is going to be good against because
it's not,
of this.
but it's not just mortal wounds. It's he has a 6-up
Yeah, right.
ward and then 3d6 spell ignore.
Yeah, I think it's most impactful because he had one weakness, which was mortal wounds from attacks and abilities. He didn't worry about the spells, didn't worry about melee because he's on that 2-up base save that he can do all the hero stuff with. But the one weakness he had was just mortal wounds from abilities and attacks. And it's a little something there.
It's not crazy, but maybe, start
It shores
small.
up that
Do you think
weakness.
they accidentally printed it on his war scroll when they meant to put it on
On
Nagash?
Nagash's, that might have been the
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
Well,
Cragnose,
I'm fine
new
with
Lord of Death.
By the way, I'm fine with Cragnose now. I feel like his war scroll is probably about where I think it should have been before.
Yeah.
And 3d6 is a 3d6 charge roll is a reason why we bring Skink Starseers and Seraphon.
Yeah.
It's a huge ability.
It is a strong ability, and it's especially strong in some destruction armies. Beastclaw Raiders and Ogres loves it.
yeah. Some people get so frustrated with the new ability, they erase whole battle reports.
So one battle report that you are not going to see because we had technical difficulties and lost the battle report
technical modified
Yeah.
was me getting absolutely destroyed by Brendan Melnick running Cragnose.
The Lord of Death,
Yes, the Lord of Death.
who never plays Death.
Running Cragnose and Beastclaw Raiders and Stonehorns. And 3d6 charge on Stonehorns. He had a 17-inch charge. He had like a 15-inch charge. And a 17-inch charge, you spike 9 mortal wounds on that charge. That's
a dead model.
That is a dead model.
Model right there.
And you have so many fewer failed charges. You have so much more mobility, right, for an army that was already fairly fast, but so much more. Ogres loves it because they have the same thing, right? Gitz loves it. Trogs, right? A Trog army suddenly has this speed.
It's like really where I'm building all these armies again for destruction that I kind of said, just Gutbusters, nah.
Yeah.
Gitz, nah. Like, let's see again. Let's have some fun with charging long ways. That we've been slow, now we're not so slow.
And it's one of those things where we're talking about how Cragnose had no interaction before, and now he has just enough where you're like, let me blow the dust off of some stuff and see if it works.
And you can start to think about things that were almost unplayable before that you wouldn't think about. Arachnaroks, right? You can deep strike a lot of Arachnaroks. And, well, then you've got a 9-inch charge, right?
Yeah.
A 9-inch charge with 3d6 is pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Soul Scream Bridge. I know Aaron is a friend of the channel, is interested in Soul Scream Bridge and Cragnose in a Gargant's list. Because you throw a model up the field with the Soul Scream Bridge, 3d6-inch charge, you're probably getting into something.
Yeah, I mean, it's really where he should have been the entire time. Interesting, I don't think broken. No, definitely not broken.
No.
Interesting,
No.
does stuff for destruction all over the place, and won't be automatically taken all over the place.
Right. And he doesn't synergize with the armies in such a way that he's going to have degenerate interactions that people are discovering for months.
Yeah.
Right. Archaon, there's so much that's synergized with him in so many different armies that every interaction was potentially something you could break Archaon with. It's not like that at all with Cragnose. He's going to slot in nicely, but he's not going to get broken.
And just the ability to kind of bring some units up and not break the whole army wide open.
Yeah.
It's just going to lead to more fun games. Like if you play, I got Gitz behind me. If you bring like 12 Trogus and Cragnose and just start like charging everywhere, I'm just going to have fun.
Well, you're up bounders now. Like they do mortals on the charge. Now they're moving 2d6, re-rolling that because of the thing they're in, and then they're so it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and it brings up the bottom.
Yeah,
right. I love when they make a change that brings up the bottom. Iron Jaws is not going to run Cragnose.
No.
Iron Jaws can just run another Mega Boss up Maul Crusher. They're fine, right? But the bottom parts of all of these destruction armies are now better because of it.
He's still, what is he, 720?
Something like that.
Yeah,
It's expensive. You pay for it.
Yeah, he's still super expensive, but
I was trying to build some Gitz lists, and I'm like, I can't get 80,
right.
80 stabs in, but
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
now let's talk about the bad stuff, because we're war gamers. We love to complain, so we've been fluffing everything. But now let's talk about bad stuff. I need to start here.
Okay.
I saw it in print. I saw this in print.
all right, let's argue.
Literally, GW said, and I quote, "This balance update will not be about nerfing top armies. You know what it's going to be about? It's going to be about bringing up those bottom guys.
Yeah.
We're going to really work on those guys. We're going to bring them up.
Yeah.
That did not happen
That
here.
did not happen.
The point changes are absolutely minimal and minimally impactful across the board for all the bad armies.
There are a couple places where there's some impactful changes. I think
For the bad armies?
Flesh Eater Courts benefits for some of their builds. Some of their spammable units got significant reductions. So ghouls got cheaper, and if you run a bunch of ghouls, those points add up. Crypt Horrors got cheaper. Flesh Eater Courts probably was the one bottom army that improved the most from points changes.
Yeah. Like, when I think of it, I was really, my thing was, let's see some Gitz. Let's see Gitz get better.
Yeah.
Let's see the Gutbuster side of Maw Tribes get better.
Heed Knights.
Let's see Heed Knights get better. Let's see Nighthaunt get better.
Yeah.
Heed Knights, I think they...
that was the biggest airball probably they shot at all.
But we did just spend 10 minutes talking about how Cragnose brings the bottom of destruction up. And they never said the points were going to be what brought armies up. So now you just have to buy $170 Cragnose.
That maybe works for destruction. Nothing brought Heat Knights up. Well, they got some points reductions, but oof.
Yeah, well, Chaos as a whole, I think, kind of suffered from
Yeah.
not specifically the points changes, but like you were saying, the changes to Coalition and that kind of stuff, not being able to bring slaves to darkness and benefit in any way from any of your stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of rough for Chaos, and especially Hedonites, because we just played a game not that long ago, and I was like, God, there's just like no punch to a lot of these units, and you still can't fit much more. I mean,
they tweaked by like 10, 20
Bliss
points.
barbs cost the same as Sentinels.
Yes. Oh.
It's really that bad. I mean, they literally did nothing for Hedonites. Like, that
some
was...
point tweaks. You know, your Twin Souls and your Pain
You're going to be
Bringers
running a lot of
are a
Slangors
little
now.
bit cheaper.
Slangors
yes. So Slangors went down. Bliss Barb Archers went down way less than they should have. But Twin Souls went down a meaningful amount. Pain Bringers went down a meaningful amount. Maybe you start to look at them some as options. But there is nothing about those changes that is going to make Slaanesh win games.
Skaven got next to... They affected the Plague Call, the Deathmaster, the Plague Priest, and Plague Furnace, and Night Runners. There are like 70 units in that army.
Yes.
They affected 4 that never see any play and will make no impact to the army.
But they never saw play before. Until you get them on the table now, who knows?
Yeah. I got a plan, man. Got a test.
Hey, we can't go back on what we said earlier.
Meanwhile, the easiest T-ball hit in the game was, fulminators are going to go up, long strikes are going to go up, or they're going to fix hero face shooting. Not sure which they're going to do with long strikes, but obviously they're going to change it.
Yeah.
No negative changes there. Which, as a Stormcast player, I'm fine with.
Stormcast only had reductions.
They only had reductions, and except for
That
the
wasn't
dragons,
even the biggest
which
T-ball.
we knew was coming.
Yeah.
That was maybe the second biggest T-ball that they missed. There was a workout ball sitting on top of the tee for them to hit. All they had to do was say, "Hey, foxes, you can't move in the opponent's shooting phase." That was silly the whole time.
Yeah.
We're not going to fix that.
It's weird that we said that after we released the book. Let's go back on that. No. Double down. You stick to your guns.
Yes.
We are not...
You can take a lesson from this. Stick to
Deal
your
with
guns.
it. Good, you scrubs.
Meanwhile, the Stormcast changes, they had reductions across the board, and the reductions were meaningless reductions. Not worth the ink. All of these named heroes went down by 10 points. They're named heroes. You can run one of them. They're all in different factions, so you're not going to run 2 of them. You're saving 10 points in your army. Why bother? Why is that printed?
And we talked about this when it happened, because Sylvaneth got some reductions on their monsters, 15 points or something per monster.
Yeah, pretty solid reduction.
Yeah,
for Sylvaneth,
and Stormcast got 10, 15 points here on named heroes, and while that as a whole doesn't affect too much, I just played a game with like 3 of these heroes against me, and I got a triumph and he didn't, and now he would and I wouldn't.
Sure.
And whether or not, I mean, I'm sure that's not what they're going for here, but it affects that kind of situation. Sure. And, I mean, it all adds up in some way or another. You might not be able to fit another unit of Liberators, but you can, not that you would, sure. But but you can you can benefit from it in other ways, or take an endless bout, or take a this or this.
Every point reduction means something.
Yeah.
Right. A point reduction might mean 10 more points for your army. It might mean 60 more points for your army if you're running 6 units of something that went down 10. Every point reduction means something. But there were so many point reductions that were needed.
I forgot.
That didn't get touched.
I forgot Archeon went up 30 points. Did he? I just looked at it. He's 860 now.
He went up?
He went up 30 points.
Well, you're only running him in Slave to Darkness, and he's still good there.
Yeah.
The reason I get so upset about it is it's so easy. You could get... I would trust, like, a lot. Even players that don't play a lot. Like, that just pay a lot of attention to the game. You get 6 guys in a room. Some are going to be conservative, some are going to be liberal. They're going to work together and update points across the board in a meaningful way and balance things. And it's going to take, if you are going to be so thorough about it, it's going to take 8 hours.
Right.
now there are people that full-time jobs is concerned about this game, and they can't just like really kill it.
One thing that I liked about this balance update is that they didn't take heavy-handed approaches to anything. Right?
Yeah,
that's
There's
good.
a lot of light touches everywhere, and if we're looking at every 3 months getting a balance update like this, I want a lot of light touches. I want them moving a little bit in the right direction until they get it right. I don't want them to smash something off the table.
Well, and a good example is that was the Giants and the Megaloss. We talked about them already.
Mm-hmm.
By nerfing the amulet, they successfully nerfed the models already.
Yes.
And then they didn't need to raise points. That was great. That was a light touch that
you
they
change too many variables. How do you tell what works?
Yes. Those things probably pull their win rates down 1% or 2.
Yeah.
Right? Probably doesn't like dramatically shift things, but it pulls the win rate down a little bit. If they do that 3 balance updates in a row, it starts to be right where we want it.
Yeah. And we were talking before about what you were looking for, and you wanted changes to gets that would actually matter, and it doesn't seem like there was a lot. What were you looking for out of this that you might not have seen?
So points changes are not something that I'm really ever clamoring for. I would much rather they have a more nuanced rules-based approach to these things, or maybe adjust points after adjusting the problem. Right.
Well, they implied that they were going to kind of do that too, because they
Yes.
did that with 40K, and they kind of said that this was going to mirror 40K and the fact that we're going to tweak rules.
Yeah, and the only thing I don't like about rules-based approaches is you buy, like, let's say you go out and you buy the War Scroll cards, and then in a month and a half or 2 months or 3 months, your War Scroll cards now don't mean what they meant before.
Yeah.
It's a problem that we always had with Magic when they would errata cards, and it's a problem that I just don't like things that I buy instantly being different. Sometimes I would rather have points changes, and if they're going to do it little by little, like, I'm okay with that.
Points changes just don't fix some of the problems.
Yeah, like, they're not going to make.
They could
Knights
literally
amazing.
make a Gorgon 100 points.
Yeah.
And you could bring 19 of them. Or you can't because of the monster rule.
Sure.
But you know what I mean? You could spam them and you're still not going to be really good.
Points changes knock you over the hump. I loved the change they made to Amulet of Destiny. I loved the change they made to Unleash Hell. Those things adjusted armies without affecting the War Scrolls, without causing problems.
Yep.
But there were some things like there's no points value at which current foxes can be played and are not broken.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't say on the War Scroll card that you can move it in your opponent's phase.
Right.
That's in an FAQ. Let's get rid of that FAQ.
Or adjust the FAQ to go the other way.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what everybody expected that FAQ to say when it came out the first time.
Yeah.
They could make updates like that without affecting the War Scrolls. The problem is that foxes, in order to fix foxes without touching that rule, you would have to make them so expensive that they cannot see play.
Yeah.
For 10 wounds and
Right.
I forgot they have 6 up, 5 up ward, something like that. I've never played against foxes.
True.
I've played one, and it's stuck around the whole game, like, no matter what.
Sure.
But I've never played against them. I'm sure they're as oppressive as people think.
The fox wall is something that you just cannot deal with.
Yeah.
As a melee army. A lot of armies have the tools that they can deal with that, but then there's a lot of armies that you're just not going to play that one.
Yeah.
And they do damage. It's not like foxes do no damage.
Yeah.
They hit.
So that sort of problem you need to fix with either a rule that says this can't work or a War Scroll change.
Yeah, and like the specific change that I was really hoping for was a change to Thralls and Reavers in Idneth to make them be able to use command abilities.
Sure.
And they didn't do that. And then a week later they announced the Thrall Master as its own model. So I'm like, all right, it all makes sense.
Sure.
Hopefully, assuming that's gonna pair nicely with
Coherency could have been touched a little bit too.
Coherency probably could use some tweaks.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Thrall Master, we got the new Battle Force box.
Yeah.
Or the Battle Box.
How I want to go first. I have never liked Fire Slayers. I love that new hero. I have never liked any of the on foot Idneth characters. I like the new Ideneth hero.
Sure.
Just the look. I don't know any of the rules yet. None of us do.
I don't like the look of the
You don't
new
like the
Fire
triple
Slayers here.
mohawk.
I don't like the triple mohawk.
I don't love
like
the stony back. The stony cape.
Oh, see, I
is
like
weird to
that.
me.
It's
Yeah.
very Salamanders in
Yeah.
40K, and I thought it was cool.
I think I like the cape too.
Yeah.
But I don't like kind of the whole front.
The
of
mask,
model,
I wasn't. He looks a little Humpty Dumpty-ish
the
too.
mohawks. 2 mohawks on Go Trick, cool. Right? When you go from 1 mohawk to 2 mohawks, that's an upgrade. When you go to 3, you're just trying to.
Yeah, law of diminishing returns.
Right.
A third mohawk takes it all down.
Right.
It's so much speculation. I mean, this usually foretells books coming out.
Yeah.
For...
And I think both of those armies are very due for a kind of an update.
Ideneth especially.
Yeah.
Well, both of them need it from a rules point of view, but Ideneth just from a timeline point of view. That book has been around forever.
It's the
still
last
good,
1.0 book, right?
Yeah.
Other than I think there was like a Legion's book that's now gone.
No, I think it's the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nurgle and IDK were the last 2.
And Ideneth do well. They do fine because they had that really nice buff in Marathi
And the Tides of Death are still
they're still so
they're
good.
so great.
And even if they took them and made them, a little like toned them down a little bit, but made everything kind of come together better. Because right now, like I like running 3 turtles, but like the list used to be eels, and now it's you can run like 6 sharks and kill a bunch of stuff with a Leviathan and maybe a Kellion King, but it's always been like pick a unit, spam it a little bit, and then
Are
fill
eels
the
good
rest of the
anymore?
points.
That's something I've been wondering. I don't see many lists that run them anymore. So are have they successfully put them to a point where
I think
they're not great anymore?
The Ishland still feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're 2 up on Rendable.
Yeah.
But most
so
Sarges
2 up on
aren't
render.
very good anymore, are they?
Not
By modern standards, they don't do as much damage as you'd really like
There's
to see.
still great movement and stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, but if you're gonna just run the one with the unrendable save. And get in there if you're just worried about the movement and capping objectives.
There's a lot of mortal wounds though now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time for a new book. It just is.
Yeah, and
Tides of Death is they're painted into a corner with Tides of Death because round 3 is just too much.
So good.
Right. So it feels like they can't make anything really good in the army and still not have that be broken.
yeah, and
The aspect of the sea went down to 325.
yeah,
By
I'm
like 4
still not gonna. Oh, that's something I want to talk about. Arcane Tome on Aspect of the Storm. It just feels better than anything else in that army.
Sure.
Yeah, it's really good.
Like-
that model is awesome.
Yeah, and sure you lose. Now I lose the ability to heroic recovery in combat, but I can still back up, charge D3 constantly.
Yeah.
I still have my 5-up ward. Now I can cast Flaming Weapon.
Not much
It's
longer though.
just so good.
That could change.
I'm fine with that changing.
Yeah.
I thought Arcane Tome was gonna be Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield, and that's it.
Let's baby
Sure.
step it though.
Yeah. And I'm fine. I'm fine with them leaving it alone for now. I actually don't think it really needs to be changed. It just feels really strong in the things that it's crazy strong in.
I thought they were just going to take the Unbind away from it. Right now you get a cast, you get to know the spell lore, Mystic Shield, Arcane Bolt, and you get an Unbind. So you're almost double dipping on artifacts there. I thought they were just going to take the Unbind away.
Yeah.
I think Fire Slayers is still I like Fire Slayers. I always have.
Yeah. I can tell. I've seen you play them never.
I mean, I just like every army, but I've always thought that they looked kind of, even though samey, they kind of kick butt. They're little guys
Yeah.
that they go in naked and they just f you up, right? But their book is clearly a product of 2nd edition. It's really bad right now. The whole thing was Hearthguard spam. That's been dwindled. People don't like the army to begin with, I think, because they are samey, so you don't see a ton of them out there, and playing against them can be, well, especially in 2nd edition, which is brutal. So let's change it up a little bit.
We talked about both of these armies in this battle box in the Discord a lot, and one of the things that I keep coming back to is
Which you should join.
Yes, join the Discord, links down below. One of the things that I keep coming back to with this battle box is that Idoneth has a bunch of unplayable foot heroes and very little unit diversity.
Yes.
Fire Slayers has a bunch of foot heroes and very little unit diversity, much less even.
Yeah.
And so the battle box comes out, we get a new unit for each. It's a foot hero. No more unit diversity, just another dude. Hopefully they're good. Hopefully they're playable. Hopefully they bring up part of that faction or both of those factions that need it. But if you're talking about the units these books needed, and I'm not saying every army needs to cover every base, right? I don't want a bunch of fast Fire Slayers.
Yeah, no.
But gosh, having something other than a naked dwarf with an axe would be nice in that army.
Do you think the dwarf book is coming? Do you think that this book will be a dwarf book, or do you think it's just straight Fire Slayers?
So that's the big rumor that's been forever, right? That we're not going to see KO, we're not going to see the dwarves in Cities of Sigmar, and we're not going to see Fire Slayers independent anymore. We're going to see Duarden United.
And I like it for Orc lands, like 3-in-1 tombs, like where you can have like the big Wa, or whatever, the little dwarf, or whatever you want to call it for. But like the reason I kind of am suspicious is because they're bringing, like, you don't know anything about the Lord, but they brought back one of their gods, like Grungy, or one of them. It's probably not Grungy. I'm probably way wrong, and correct me in the comments. But because they did that, and he's worshipped by KO and all the dwarves, like maybe that's their little way of saying let's put them all in a book.
So they drop a god model.
No, I don't think they'll do it though. But I think it
dwarves.
could serve in the fluff as a way to unify the dwarf.
I think the sticking point for me when I think about it is that Cities of Sigmar dwarves probably don't go there.
You don't think
because
so?
I don't think they're going to pull all of that out of Cities of Sigmar.
Would they? I guess it's hard to say if they would have to pull it out or not.
They could just be a coalition though.
Yeah.
Fire Slayers and KO though, dump them in a book. Those seem like completely different armies lumped into one book. Both of them would be shored up by the other, right? They work well together. Barrack, what is it, Thring, that you can run both. They work well together, but thematically you're talking about entirely different armies.
When you buy those books, you do feel like you're getting cheated a little bit with how there's not a lot of war scrolls in either. So you're paying $50 or $40, whatever the price is now, for 10 war scrolls a piece.
Yeah,
so it's like
small swath. You're actually only paying for the things you can't get on the app, which is
well,
a couple.
They're doing it a little bit. Allegiance abilities.
Yeah, a couple of things. And
GW, fix the fact that my rules keep disappearing from the books. I've already added. I restart my phone like at least once a day to get my rules.
I'm excited if we can get new books. If it's a Dwarf United or a Fire Slayers book, doesn't matter to me. I don't play any of those. But I would like to see whatever dwarf players want. Like I'm excited for. And then
everybody
Idoneth,
wants new rules.
Yeah, and then Idoneth, just they always seemed like the test bed for things that went into second. Like Sylvaneth had their terrain piece, and then Idoneth was like, as far as I know, like the kind of the first like big terrain piece that you got with your allegiance. And they had the sub-faction abilities and stuff, which were never in my 1.0 books. And and it seemed like everything kind of worked. And then the next couple books, everybody got all that stuff. And it's like, okay, this was kind of like how we tested this out. And now it feels super dated. And the thing that was always good is always good. And the things that weren't good before are really bad now. And like I know you didn't want this just a hero, like a stagnant foot hero.
Sure.
But if he can bring thralls up, and if he can bring reavers, reavers are actually pretty good now in third edition.
Okay.
If you run 90.
Yeah, if you run 90. But if he can bring thralls up a little bit and get mine out of my case and onto a table, I am going to be so happy. That it's like and the box
you got
comes
me
with an
excited
ammo
about thralls. Literally, after I watched you play them against the dragons the other day, I was like, oh,
they're
thralls.
good against monsters. For sure.
Yeah.
When I think about though what that war scroll would have to look like to make thralls good,
2-inch reach, game over.
If so, the hero's going to give the thralls 2-inch reach.
Oh no! On the war scroll, I think.
I mean,
you're saying
what
what
the
the
hero would have to be.
Highland
all
6, if you're
I
within...
want on him is ignore battle shock.
Really? You think that would make Thralls a good unit?
That would make Thralls good for me.
Sure.
Because when I play a list like what I played against you, and I have 3 units of Thralls just to fill out my detachment, or my army requirements, and then I have 3 turtles, well, I can drop a turtle, run a little bit bigger units of Thralls, and not have to worry about constantly losing them to a 6 bravery.
When I look at foot heroes, though, the meta has shifted to become so anti-low wound heroes that wouldn't cut it for me. Right. I would look at that and say, well, if that's important to me, my opponent will take it away. And I've paid 150 points for 5 wounds or 6 wounds that they take off.
Yeah, but there's a lot they could do with it just to give it a little bit of a lift.
Sure.
I don't know what those things are.
I think fundamentally the Thrall's War Scroll needs to have some changes.
Yeah, but even if it's something you added into a unit of Thralls, I would be so happy.
Sure.
I know they're not going to do that for something you have to buy at whatever we think this price of box is going to be, but I just want something to make them fun to play.
I just think if you put in the 2-inch reach, then they become, like, even if the battle shock is still bad, that upside is so high on it then, because you're getting 10 attacks in rather than the 5 or 6 you might get in now.
20 attacks in.
Fine, 20 attacks in. So, like, then even if they die in a ball of flame, like, you know, they've done something while they were there, whereas now it's not.
Well, and specifically, this box comes with War Scroll cards for everything.
Yeah, true.
They did not say if they're updated or not. They might not be,
right?
They might not be the Thralls that we know.
Right.
They might be a little bit tweaked.
This might be like a Dominion release where you get a new set of units and maybe an allegiance ability for each army, and that could be a little bit of a teaser for what those books are going to look like.
And I mean, if they give a 2-inch reach to Thralls, first of all, it's going to feel really bad for everything that still has a 1-inch reach and has been updated already. But you know, I mean, that makes them playable but you still have to babysit them with some kind of hero or something.
Well, or you just say, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to F stuff up, and then I'm going to die. So
I don't remember
and
how
that's
fast
a dead model.
but they're not
real fast. But they do have
6,
all the Idneth abilities. So they're going to have the run and charge. They're going to have the fight first in round 3. Yeah. All those things add up to make them pretty effective. As rules sit right now, who knows what that's going to be like?
Yeah. And that also ties into they could have tweaked coherency just a little.
Yeah, just a little bit of a change there. You know, maybe make it 1.25 inches for
fighting 2 lanes,
or an inch and a third.
Yeah, you have to be within an inch of, or like in combat, you fight everything that's within half an inch of the thing, like they do in 40k or whatever it is.
Right. If your base is touching a friendly model whose base is also touching the enemy, you're good to go.
Yeah. Any of that stuff. God, now it just sounds so good. And I just want it to be.
So we haven't been recording that often because realistically, there hasn't been...
My heart sank right there when you said we haven't been recording. Because I thought you were talking about this.
No, I mean, this is only our second cast.
Yeah.
But I think it's really because we've seen a delay in stuff coming out. I mean, we could have been a little bit early with Nurgle and maybe got 1 Nurgle, 1 points, but... my big hope for the new year is just let's really start mass producing. Let's get a lot of books out. I mean, we only had 5 or 6 last year.
A lot of armies that really need the update right now.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about United Dwarf book. I wouldn't be super excited about it as a KO player, but I would be excited about it as an Age of Sigmar player because it means instead of waiting even further and then having another Battletome that pushes the whole schedule back, we get 2 army updates.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I always kind of want them to do. Back in 8th edition 40k, they released these indexes that had like updated stuff for all the armies, and like every edition I kind of hope they're going to do that, and they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're better off or not.
Sure.
Because a lot of those indexes were not perfect, and like, you know, having like a Grand Alliance book that came out that has, hey, here's updates for all these units. They're getting their own book. It wouldn't feel as sluggish with all this stuff.
Right. And that's the Broken Realms series kind of bridged that gap for some armies. Idneth is an example where they weren't going to get a book for a long time. Broken Realms stepped in, gave them a lot of help.
But I totally feel like I wasted my money on those books now.
That's fair. And there are a lot of factions that really needed it that didn't get touched. Khorne. didn't get touched. Hopefully they've got a book coming soon. I would love to see the new Khorne book. But meanwhile, they didn't get anything from Broken Realms. They haven't been touched since their book came out. It's been a while.
But Archeon with Scarbrand now, so
sure.
So they
got that.
Hey, you bring the bottom up,
right,
without directly affecting the bottom.
And Khorne has gotten play from some other things. Khorne is one of the cases where you're still going to be running your coalition unit because the Khorne Demon Prince is so impactful. And Khorne is just better in 3.0 than they were in 2.0. Still not to the middle, right? They still need some help, but they have improved. They're going in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything you guys have on that box set other than that?
No.
I
think it's time to say Happy New Year, really.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Super happy to have you along for the conversation. Join the Discord down below. Continue the conversation there, or leave us a comment and let us know what you thought, what your thoughts are on the Nurgle Tome and on the points updates and the FAQ. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
I'd also like to see just a list of comments on how old you think Justin is.
Let's guess. It's between 30 and 120.
He was born somewhere in the 1900s. And we're not sure when it was.
Did I fight in World War II?
But I know we dug him up to come and talk about this.
And leave comments about what you guys want to see in the new year, what you hope, how good I look with this gray silver fox over here and
dragons,
stuff
I'm sure.
like that. Yeah.
Lots of dragons.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.